The galaxy learned three things about humans the hard way. First, they built things that shouldn't work but somehow do. Their ships held together with what the Galactic Council called impossible engineering, welds that violated physics, power cores that ran on stubborn determination, and weapons systems that made veteran engineers weep. Second, they never throw anything away. While other species scrapped outdated vessels, humans kept every rust bucket, every broken fighter, every damaged freighter. They called it vintage. The galaxy called it junk. Third, and, most importantly, they remember who their friends are. When the Kethmori swarm emerged from the void between galaxies, a plague of biomechanical horrors that consumed entire star systems, the advanced civilizations fell one by one. The proud Valaxian Empire with their crystal ships. The ancient Zephyrite Collective with technology spanning millennia. The seemingly invincible Drachmer Federation with their planet-killing dreadnoughts. All of them had one thing in common: they had rejected Earth's application to join the Galactic Council. Humans, they said, were too primitive. Too violent. Too unrefined. But, when the swarm turned its hungry eyes toward the small, stubborn species that refused to die, something unprecedented happened. Every human ship ever built, from sleek military destroyers to battered cargo haulers, from experimental research vessels to ancient colony ships held together with prayer and duct tape, began receiving the same transmission. It came from species the galaxy had written off as extinct. From worlds the swarm had supposedly consumed. From allies humanity had made in the shadows while the civilized galaxy looked down on them. Brothers and sisters of Earth, the message began, it's time to come home. What followed would reshape the very definition of galactic warfare. Because the galaxy was about to learn that humans don't just build ships. They build families. And family protects family. Captain Sarah Chen stared at the transmission replay for the 15th time, her coffee growing cold in the zero-gravity mug. The bridge of the cargo hauler persistent dream hummed around her with the familiar sounds of aging equipment working harder than it should. Outside the viewport, the Kepler station shipyard stretched into the distance, a maze of construction platforms and half-built vessels that had been Earth's answer to galactic rejection. "Run it again, Marcus," she said to her communications officer, a graying man whose hands moved across outdated controls with practiced ease. The holographic display flickered to life, showing the face of someone Sarah had thought dead for 3 years. Admiral Kara Okafor had vanished when her exploration fleet encountered the Kethmori advance scouts near the Centauri breach. The entire Fifth Fleet, 47 ships and 18,000 souls, had simply disappeared into the black. But here she was, older, scarred, very much alive. Brothers and sisters of Earth, the recording began, Kara's voice carrying across space with crystal clarity. My fleet survived. We found something the galaxy doesn't know about. The species the swarm consumed, they're not dead. They're hiding. Waiting. Building. Sarah leaned forward as the transmission continued. Behind Kara, she caught glimpses of impossible architecture, organic curves mixed with mechanical precision. Beings she didn't recognize moved in the background, their forms strange but purposeful. The Threnodite taught us about the swarm's weakness. The Makari showed us how to mask our signatures. The hegemony exiles shared their weapons technology. For 3 years, we've been gathering every species the galaxy forgot, everyone the Council abandoned. Kara's eyes seemed to look directly through the screen at Sarah. The swarm is coming to Earth. But we're coming home first. The transmission shifted, showing vast shipyards hidden in the shadow of a brown dwarf star. Ships unlike anything Sarah had ever seen filled the screen. Human designs, yes, but transformed. Enhanced. The familiar lines of Earth vessels merged with alien technology in ways that should have been impossible. Every human ship ever built has a quantum signature in our databases, Kara continued. Every cargo hauler, every transport, every rusty bucket held together with hope and determination. We're sending activation codes. It's time to remember what we really are. The screen went dark except for coordinates and a simple message: come home. Bring everyone. Marcus turned from his station, his face pale. Captain, we're receiving data packets. Thousands of them.
Technical specifications, upgrade protocols, weapons configurations. It's all addressed to the persistent dream specifically.
Sarah stood, her mind racing. The persistent dream was barely combat-worthy on her best day. She was a cargo hauler, designed to move supplies between Earth and the outer colonies. Her crew of 12 was made up of merchants, engineers, and dreamers who would sign on because the pay was decent and the destinations exotic.
What kind of weapons configurations? She asked. Marcus's fingers danced over his console.
I'm seeing plasma conduit modifications that would triple our power output. Armor specifications using some kind of biometallic composite. Targeting systems that claim they can track objects moving at 97% light speed. He paused, scrolling through more data. Captain, according to this, every cargo clamp on our ship can be converted into a weapon mounting point.
The implications hit Sarah like a freight train. Earth's merchant fleet wasn't just a commercial network, it was a hidden military force waiting to be activated. Every trade route they'd established, every relationship they'd built with lesser species, every favor they'd done for beings the Council considered beneath notice had been preparation for this moment. Helm, set course for those coordinates, Sarah ordered. Engineering, I want a full analysis of these upgrade protocols. Figure out what we need and how long it'll take.
Chief Engineer Tommy Nakamura's voice crackled through the calm already on it, Captain.
But, you should see this. The modifications aren't just bolt-on additions.
They're designed to work with every improvised repair we've ever made, every jury-rigged system, every impossible solution we've cobbled together.
It's like they've been watching us, learning how we think. Sarah smiled grimly. Maybe they have been.
Marcus, open a channel to Earth Command.
Emergency priority. The face of Admiral Morrison appeared on screen within moments, his expression tense. Sarah, please tell me you have good news. The Swarm Vanguard just wiped out the Valaxian home fleet. 600 ships gone in 4 hours. Sir, I'm uploading transmission data now. Admiral Okafor is alive, and she's not alone. The galaxy's about to get a very unpleasant surprise. Morrison's eyes widened as he reviewed the data. Mother of God. Sarah, how many ships are in Earth's merchant fleet? Official count? 47,000 registered vessels. Unofficial count? Sarah grinned.
Every human who ever strapped an engine to a metal box and called it a ship.
We're talking hundreds of thousands of craft, Admiral.
And, according to this data, every single one can be turned into a weapon of war. The next 6 hours transformed the persistent dream from a simple cargo hauler into something that would have given galactic military engineers nightmares. The upgrade process was unlike anything Sarah had ever experienced. Instead of replacing their existing systems, the new technology integrated seamlessly, enhancing rather than replacing. The cargo clamps that had once held shipping containers now mounted railguns that could punch through battlecruiser armor. The reactor that had barely been sufficient for interstellar travel now pulsed with exotic matter converters that generated enough power to run a small space station. The hull plates, scarred and patched from years of hard use, were reinforced with biometallic compounds that could repair themselves and adapt to different types of damage. Most importantly, the ship felt alive in a way it never had before. The controls responded to thought as much as touch. The sensors could detect quantum fluctuations across light years. The navigation system seemed to know where they wanted to go before they did. It's not just technology, Tommy reported from engineering. It's like the ship is thinking. The new systems are learning from us, adapting to how we work, compensating for our weaknesses and amplifying our strengths. Sarah nodded, feeling the truth of it in her bones. The persistent dream had always been more than just a ship to her crew, it was home, family, a piece of humanity carrying them through the vast darkness between stars. Now that emotional connection had become something tangible, a bond between human intuition and alien science that created something greater than the sum of its parts. As they approached the rendezvous coordinates, Sarah's sensors began picking up other ships. Human vessels of every size and description, all broadcasting the same modification signatures. Cargo haulers like hers, passenger liners, research vessels, even ancient colony ships that should have been scrapped decades ago. all of them transformed, all of them heading home. But it was what waited for them at the coordinates that took Sarah's breath away. The hidden shipyard was a marvel of cooperative engineering. Human efficiency merged with Threnody biotechnology, Makari stealth systems, and weapons technology from a dozen species the galaxy had forgotten. Ships that had been presumed lost hung in construction frameworks, being rebuilt with technologies that shouldn't have existed.
And there, at the center of it all, was Admiral Kira Okafor's flagship, the Earth's Vengeance. Once a heavy cruiser, it had been transformed into something that defied classification. Organic curves flowed into angular armor plating.
Weapons that pulsed with bioluminescent energy were mounted alongside railguns and missile systems. It was beautiful and terrible, a perfect fusion of human determination and alien innovation. Kira's face appeared on the main screen as the persistent dream docked. "Welcome home, Captain Chen. I see you brought friends." Sarah looked at the tactical display showing the gathering fleet. Nearly 1,000 ships had answered the call so far, with more arriving every hour.
"Admiral, what are we really looking at here? This isn't just about upgrading ships, is it?" "No, Sarah, it's not." Kira's expression was serious. "The galaxy has rules. Hierarchies. Some species are advanced and get to make decisions. Others are primitive and get ignored. The Council decided humanity wasn't worth their time, so they left us to find our own way. And we did," Sarah realized. "We did." While they were building their perfect civilizations and following their ancient protocols, we were out here making friends with everyone they deemed unworthy. Every species they abandoned, every world they wrote off, every group of refugees they ignored, we found them. We helped them. We learned from them. The implications were staggering. Humanity hadn't just been building a merchant fleet, they'd been creating an entirely parallel galactic civilization. One based on cooperation instead of hierarchy, innovation instead of tradition, inclusion instead of exclusion. "The swarm isn't just a threat to individual species," Kira continued. "It's a threat to the idea that different types of life can coexist. The Council's response is to retreat to their core worlds and wait for someone else to solve the problem. Our response is to stand together and solve it ourselves." Sarah felt a chill as she understood the full scope of what they were facing. This wasn't just a war between species, it was a war between philosophies. And humanity had spent decades unknowingly choosing sides. "What do you need us to do, Admiral?" Kira smiled, and, for the first time in the transmission, she looked like the officer Sarah remembered. "We're going to do what humans do best, Captain. We're going to break all the rules and make it work anyway. The swarm thinks it's hunting isolated prey. Instead, it's about to discover that when you attack one member of this family, you attack all of us." As if summoned by her words, the shipyard's communication system crackled to life. Species after species announced their arrival, not the great powers of the galaxy, but the forgotten ones. The survivors. The innovators. The rebels. They came in ships that mixed biology and technology in impossible ways. They brought weapons that fired contained stars and shields that bent space itself. They offered knowledge that had been hidden for millennia and resources that defied economic logic. And, at the center of it all were humans, the species the galaxy had dismissed as too primitive to matter, coordinating the greatest alliance in galactic history with nothing more than stubborn determination and an absolute refusal to abandon their friends. The persistent dream shuddered slightly as her new systems fully integrated, and Sarah felt the ship's consciousness touch hers briefly, a moment of perfect understanding between human and machine and something beyond both. Outside the viewport, the hidden fleet continued to grow, each ship a testament to the power of cooperation over conquest, innovation over tradition, and family over hierarchy. The galaxy had made its choice long ago. Now it was time to see what humanity's choice would bring. The war came to Earth 3 weeks later, exactly as Admiral Kara Okafor had predicted. The Kethmori swarm materialized at the edge of the solar system like a plague of mechanical locusts, their bioships pulsing with hungry bioluminescence against the starfield. Intelligence reports had estimated their numbers in the thousands.
The reality was closer to 500,000 vessels of various sizes, from fighter analogs the size of shuttles to massive hive ships that dwarfed anything in human space. Captain Sarah Chen watched from the bridge of the persistent Dream, now part of humanity's first irregular fleet, as the swarm's advanced scouts probed the outer system. Her ship hung in formation with 943 other vessels that had once been civilian craft.
Cargo haulers, passenger liners, research ships, mining platforms, and even a few converted luxury yachts, all of them now bristling with weapons technology that made traditional military doctrine obsolete. Contact from Earth Command, Marcus reported. Admiral Morrison wants to speak with all fleet commanders.
The main screen shifted to show Admiral Morrison's face, but he looked different than Sarah remembered. Gone was the polished perfection of a career military officer. In its place was something harder, more determined. Behind him, Sarah could see the transformed Luna shipyards, where Earth's actual military fleet was making final preparations. People, Morrison began without preamble, what you're seeing on your sensors isn't the full swarm force. Our deep space networks are tracking at least 2 million more vessels moving through hyperspace. They'll arrive in approximately 6 hours. Sarah felt her stomach drop. 2.5 million Kethmori ships against Earth's combined forces. Even with their technological upgrades, the math didn't look promising. Morrison continued. The good news is that Admiral Okafor's intelligence was accurate. The swarm operates on a hive mind structure, but it's not as unified as our models suggested. There are actually multiple competing swarm clusters that have learned to cooperate. If we can disrupt their coordination, we can turn them against each other, Sarah finished, understanding immediately. Exactly. But, first, we need to survive their initial assault. The swarm has a standard first-wave doctrine. They send fast attack groups to eliminate defensive positions, then, bring in the heavy hitters to consume everything that's left. We're going to let them think it's working. The tactical display shifted to show the solar system with Earth's defensive positions marked. Traditional military wisdom would have concentrated forces around key installations: Earth itself, Luna, Mars, the asteroid belt mining stations. Instead, Sarah saw something that looked like organized chaos. Admiral, Captain Rebecca Shaw of the converted cruise liner Star Princess spoke up. Are we seriously planning to scatter our forces across the entire system? We're not scattering, Morrison replied. We're implementing what Admiral Okafor calls the human doctrine. The swarm expects us to fight like every other species they've encountered, defensively, predictably, by the book. Instead, we're going to fight like humans. Sarah grinned despite the circumstances. She was beginning to understand the plan, and it was beautifully insane. Every species the swarm has faced tries to protect their most valuable assets, Morrison explained. They build fortress worlds, concentrate their fleets, fight from positions of strength. We're going to do the opposite. We're going to make everything look equally valuable and equally vulnerable. The plan was elegantly simple. Earth's civilian fleet would spread throughout the system, each ship broadcasting false signatures that made them appear to be critical infrastructure. Mining vessels would masquerade as research stations. Cargo haulers would emit energy patterns suggesting they were manufacturing facilities. Passenger liners would fake the signatures of command vessels. Meanwhile, Earth's actual military fleet would hide in the shadows, powered down, running silent, using the new stealth technology provided by their alien allies. When the swarm committed to attacking the apparent targets, the real fleet would emerge and strike at their coordination nodes. It's a shell game, Sarah realized. Except we're the shells, and we're all armed. With a few extra tricks, Morrison added. The modifications you've received aren't just weapons and armor. Each ship now carries quantum entanglement communicators that operate faster than light. The swarm can't jam them, can't intercept them, and can't trace them. You'll be coordinating in real time across light years of space. As if to demonstrate, Sarah felt a subtle shift in her consciousness. Suddenly, she wasn't just aware of her own ship, she could sense the entire human fleet, each vessel a node in a vast network of shared awareness. It wasn't telepathy exactly, but something close. The emotional resonance of 943 crews became part of her tactical picture. Holy hell,
Chief Engineer Tommy Nakamura's voice came through the comm. "Captain, are you feeling this?" Sarah nodded, even though he couldn't see her. The sensation was overwhelming at first, hundreds of human minds linked together not in unity, but in harmony. Each ship maintained its independence while contributing to a greater whole. It was like conducting an orchestra where every musician was also a composer. "Fleet commanders," Morrison's voice cut through the shared awareness. "The Swarm Vanguard is accelerating. Time to take your positions. Remember, you're not just representing humanity out there. You're representing everyone the galaxy forgot. Make them remember why that was a mistake." The next 4 hours passed in a blur of preparation and positioning. Sarah watched as her crew transformed from merchants and engineers into something she'd never seen before: warriors who fought with tools instead of weapons, who saw patterns instead of targets, who turned problems into solutions through sheer bloody-minded innovation. The persistent Dream took position near Europa, broadcasting signals that suggested she was a critical ice mining operation. In reality, her cargo holds now contained enough antimatter to vaporize a small moon, and her modified engines could accelerate her to 70% of light speed in under 30 seconds. When the Swarm scouts finally arrived, they moved exactly as predicted. Fast, aggressive, and utterly confident. They swept through the outer system in loose formations, probing for defenses and cataloging targets. Sarah watched on her sensors as they marked her ship as low-priority infrastructure and moved on. The main assault began exactly 6 hours and 14 minutes after Morrison's briefing. The first wave consisted of approximately 50,000 bioships, ranging in size from fighter analogs to light cruisers. They moved with perfect coordination, their formation patterns shifting like a living thing as they adjusted to perceived threats. Sarah felt the shared awareness of the fleet shift into combat mode. Suddenly, she wasn't just Captain Chen of the persistent Dream, she was part of something larger, a collective consciousness that spanned the solar system. Every sensor reading, every tactical analysis, every inspired guess was shared instantly across the network. The Swarm fell for the deception completely. They divided their forces to attack what they perceived as hundreds of isolated targets: mines, factories, research stations, command posts. Each attack group was numerically superior to their apparent target, enough to ensure quick victory without unnecessary risk. What they found instead was 943 ships that had been designed by people who considered impossible to be a personal challenge. The converted cruise liner Star Princess was attacked by a formation of 30 swarm fighters near Mars. The bioships expected to find a lightly defended passenger vessel. Instead, they discovered that luxury accommodations could be rapidly reconfigured into launch bays for drone swarms, and that entertainment systems made excellent targeting computers for point defense networks. Captain Shaw's crew, mostly former hospitality workers, destroyed the entire attack formation in 97 seconds while serving afternoon tea in the ship's main lounge. Near the asteroid belt, the cargo hauler Lucky Strike was engaged by a swarm light cruiser. Captain Rodriguez, a former asteroid miner, waited until the bioship was within optimal range before revealing that his cargo holds contained not refined metals, but a collection of weaponized mining charges that could crack asteroids. The swarm ship found itself on the wrong end of controlled nuclear explosions delivered with industrial precision. The pattern repeated throughout the system. Every attack group found their easy targets were anything but. Worse, from the swarm's perspective, was that the human ships refused to behave predictably. Traditional space combat doctrine involved formations, positioning, and careful maneuvering. Human ships fought like they were still hauling cargo through dangerous space individually, creatively, with a complete disregard for conventional tactics. Sarah found herself facing 3 swarm destroyers near Jupiter. According to every military manual ever written, she should have been doomed. The bioships outgunned her, outmaneuvered her, and outnumbered her 3-1. Instead, she did something no swarm tactical computer could have predicted: she surrendered. The bioships moved in to capture what they assumed was a defeated cargo vessel, their biological sensors detecting no weapon signatures, no defensive systems, nothing but a helpless merchant ship. They never detected the antimatter charges Sarah had ejected from her cargo bay, disguised as floating debris. The persistent Dream was designed to move cargo, and that included cargo that would vaporize 3 destroyers if detonated at exactly the right moment.
Tommy, Sarah called to engineering as her ship's stealth systems engaged. Remind me to send a thank you note to whoever designed our new sensor scramblers. Already composing it, Captain, Tommy replied cheerfully. Though I think the Threnodidae prefer interpretive dance to written communication. Across the system, the shared awareness network hummed with similar success stories. The human fleet was taking casualties. The swarm wasn't incompetent, just unprepared, but they were giving far better than they got. More importantly, they were accomplishing their primary objective.
The swarm's coordination was beginning to break down.
Bioships that had expected quick victories found themselves in extended engagements. Attack groups that should have been regrouping for the next phase were instead scattered across the system, each dealing with human vessels that refused to die quickly or predictably. Command nodes that should have been processing victory reports were instead trying to make sense of combat data that violated everything they understood about space warfare. That was when Earth's real military fleet revealed itself. Admiral Morrison's dreadnought Sovereign materialized from stealth less than 1,000 kilometers from the swarm's primary command vessel, a massive bioship the size of a city. Alongside her came the rest of Earth's heavy fleet, ships that had been built for war from the beginning, now enhanced with alien technology and human innovation. But even the military vessels fought differently than the swarm expected. Instead of the formal engagement patterns that characterized galactic warfare, they moved like predators. They struck without warning, targeted critical systems with surgical precision, and disappeared before the enemy could respond effectively. The swarm's hive mind structure, their greatest strength against conventional opponents, became a liability against human tactics. When human ships targeted coordination nodes, the disruption cascaded through the entire network. Bioships found themselves receiving contradictory orders, friendly fire incidents increased exponentially, and entire formations began operating at cross purposes.
Sarah watched through the shared awareness as the tide of battle turned.
The swarm was still numerically superior, but numbers meant nothing when the enemy couldn't coordinate effectively. Human ships that had been scattered across the system began converging on isolated swarm groups, turning hunter into prey with ruthless efficiency. All ships, Admiral Morrison's voice came through the quantum communication network. Phase 2 is authorized.
Let's show them what a real human fleet can do.
The response was immediate and devastating. Ships that had been pretending to be helpless civilians revealed their true capabilities. The cargo hauler that had been running from pursuit suddenly decelerated to zero, allowing her pursuers to overshoot directly into the firing solution of 3 other human vessels. The mining platform that appeared to be under attack revealed that her industrial equipment included mass drivers that could accelerate projectiles to significant fractions of light speed. Most terrifying of all, from the swarm's perspective, was that the humans continued to improvise.
No two human ships fought the same way.
Each crew developed their own tactics, their own solutions, their own interpretations of the impossible. The shared awareness network allowed them to coordinate without homogenizing, to work together while maintaining the individual creativity that made them human.
As the battle entered its 6th hour, Sarah realized they were witnessing something unprecedented in galactic history.
For the first time, the Kethmori swarm was not just being defeated, they were being outthought. The bioships began withdrawing toward the edge of the system, their formations ragged and their coordination systems badly damaged. But Sarah knew the real test was still coming. The main swarm fleet was approaching, and it would be prepared for human tactics.
The war for humanity's survival was just beginning.
The main swarm fleet emerged from hyperspace like a living nightmare. 2 million bioships materialized at the edge of the solar system, their forms ranging from sleek fighter analogs to massive hive ships that dwarfed anything in human space. But these weren't the same chaotic formations that had attacked earlier. These ships moved with perfect precision, their coordination intact and their tactics adapted.
Captain Sarah Chen felt the collective intake of breath from the human fleet through their shared awareness network.
The persistent dream hung in space near what remained of the asteroid belt, her hull scarred from the previous engagement but her crew's spirit unbroken. Around her, 912 human ships waited in seemingly random positions throughout the solar system, each one a trap waiting to be sprung. They learned fast. Admiral Morrison's voice came through the quantum communicator, tinged with grudging respect.
Look at their formations. Sarah studied the tactical display.
The swarm had abandoned their previous swarm tactics in favor of something more methodical. Instead of dividing to attack multiple targets, they were advancing as a unified wall of destruction, systematically sweeping each section of space before moving to the next. "They're treating us like a minefield," Captain Rebecca Shaw observed from the Star Princess. "Methodical advance, overlapping sensor coverage, mutual support. They won't get caught by individual ships hiding in the dark." "Good," Admiral Kara Okafor's voice cut through the network. "Then, it's time for Lesson 2. Sarah felt a shift in the shared awareness as new ships began materializing throughout the solar system. These weren't human vessels, at least, not entirely. The craft that emerged from stealth carried the familiar angular lines of human engineering, but they'd been transformed by alien biotechnology into something that seemed almost alive. The hidden fleet had arrived. "Sisters and brothers," Kara's voice carried across space with quiet intensity, "allow me to introduce our extended family." The first ship to fully materialize was a modified human destroyer that had been presumed lost 3 years earlier. But the defiance Sarah remembered was gone. In its place was something that pulsed with bioluminescent patterns, its hull flowing like liquid metal, its weapons systems humming with energies that hurt to look at directly. "The Defiant," Kara announced. "Rebuilt with hegemony exile gravitational manipulation technology. She can alter local spacetime to create weapons that fire backwards through time." More ships appeared. A cargo hauler that had been enhanced with Makari phase shift technology, allowing it to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. A research vessel that had been merged with Threnody bioneural networks, turning the entire ship into a single vast thinking machine. A passenger liner that had been equipped with what Kara called probability manipulation systems, weapons that didn't just hit targets, but ensured that targets would be there to be hit. "How is this possible?" Sarah whispered. 3 years, Kara replied. 3 years of working with species the galaxy forgot, learning technologies the Council dismissed as impossible or dangerous. "We've been building more than ships, Sarah. We've been building a new way to fight." The swarm's methodical advance hesitated as their sensors tried to process what they were seeing. The bioships had evolved to counter human tactics, individual creativity, improvisation, technological innovation. They weren't prepared for human tactics combined with alien science that defied conventional physics. That hesitation was all the opening humanity needed. The attack began not with weapons fire, but with space itself. The modified Defiant engaged her gravitational manipulators, and, suddenly, a section of swarm formation found itself experiencing time differently. Half the bioships were moving normally while the other half were trapped in temporal loops, receiving orders from 30 seconds in the past and firing at targets that no longer existed. The cargo hauler phase walker activated her dimensional systems and simply stepped sideways out of reality. She reappeared inside a swarm hive ship's defensive perimeter, materializing her cargo bay full of antimatter directly into the bioship's vital systems. Meanwhile, the research vessel Infinite Curiosity opened fire with weapons that didn't exist in any conventional sense. Her bioneural targeting systems calculated probability matrices for every possible target location, then fired at all of them simultaneously. Swarm ships found themselves being hit by projectiles that had been aimed at where they might be, not where they were. But the most devastating attack came from the passenger liner Probability Rose. Captain Elena Vasquez had spent 3 years learning to think like her hegemony exile allies, and her ship's new systems allowed her to manipulate quantum probability on a massive scale. Instead of firing weapons, the Probability Rose simply made it more likely that swarm ships would suffer critical system failures. Not inevitable, just more likely. Across a formation of 10,000 bioships, that small change in probability cascaded into catastrophic results. Engines failed at precisely the wrong moments. Weapon systems overloaded during critical firing sequences. Navigation computers developed glitches that sent ships careening into their neighbors. Probability manipulation, Sarah breathed. They're not fighting the swarm, they're making the swarm fight itself. The human fleet's conventional ships joined the attack with renewed vigor. Cargo haulers that had seemed helpless against the swarm's new tactics suddenly found themselves supported by vessels that could bend spacetime itself. The shared awareness network allowed for coordination across multiple dimensions and timelines simultaneously. Sarah found herself facing a swarm-heavy cruiser that had adapted to her previous tactics. The bioship maintained distance, used overlapping sensor coverage to prevent stealth attacks, and coordinated with nearby vessels to eliminate surprise options. "Tommy," Sarah called to engineering, "patch me through to the Defiant."
"I want to try something stupid."
"My favorite kind of plan, Captain," Tommy replied cheerfully. Moments later, Captain Williams of the Defiant appeared on screen. His appearance had changed over the 3 years. There were silver traces in his neural pathways that suggested integration with hegemony technology, and his eyes held depths that spoke of experiences beyond normal human understanding.
"Sarah," he said with genuine warmth, "want to try some temporal cooperation? Can you put me 30 seconds in the past?" Williams grinned. "I can do better than that. How about we attack them yesterday?"
The coordination required was mind-bending. The Defiant created a temporal loop around the persistent dream, allowing Sarah's ship to fire at the swarm cruiser 30 seconds before the engagement actually began.
The bioship's sensors detected incoming projectiles from a ship that hadn't entered the combat zone yet.
But the real stroke of genius came from Sarah's crew. Instead of using the temporal advantage to simply attack more effectively, they used it to communicate. Tommy Nakamura sent technical specifications backward through time to his past self, allowing the engineering team to modify their weapons systems with foreknowledge of the swarm ship's defensive capabilities.
The result was a feedback loop of innovation.
Each iteration of the battle allowed the human crew to refine their approach, until they were essentially fighting with the combined experience of dozens of possible timelines. The swarm cruiser never stood a chance.
Across the solar system, similar innovations were taking place.
Human creativity, enhanced by alien science and coordinated through quantum consciousness networks, was producing results that violated everything the swarm understood about warfare.
But Sarah realized the true masterstroke wasn't the exotic weapons or impossible technologies. It was something much more fundamentally human. "They're not trying to defeat us," she announced through the shared awareness network. "They're trying to understand us."
The insight cascaded through the human consciousness, and, suddenly, Sarah could feel the collective realization. The Kethmori swarm was a hive mind that operated by absorbing and integrating the characteristics of its prey. Every species they'd conquered had become part of their collective knowledge, their tactical database, their understanding of how life fought for survival.
But humanity refused to be predictable enough to absorb.
Every ship, Admiral Morrison's voice cut through the network, implement protocol chaos.
Show them what true human innovation looks like. Protocol chaos wasn't a tactical plan, it was the deliberate abandonment of tactical plans.
Each human ship was given complete freedom to engage the enemy however they saw fit, using whatever combination of conventional and exotic technologies their crews could devise. The results were beautiful and terrifying. The Star Princess converted her ballrooms into launch bays for swarms of weaponized maintenance drones, each programmed with the tactical knowledge of cruise ship social directors who specialized in managing chaos.
The mining platform Rock Crusher used her industrial equipment to literally grab swarm fighters with giant mechanical hands and throw them at larger bioships.
The research vessel Darwin's Revenge released clouds of rapidly evolving nanobots that adapted to counter swarm defenses faster than the bioships could adapt to them. Most remarkable of all was the luxury yacht Inevitable Consequences, crewed by a family of adventure tourists who had been vacationing in the outer system when the war began. They armed their ship with what they called aggressive hospitality systems, weapons that didn't destroy targets so much as forcibly integrate them into human social structures. Swarm bioships found themselves being served tea and forced to participate in group therapy sessions while their systems were slowly and politely converted to human-compatible configurations.
The swarm's hive mind began to fragment under the assault of pure, undiluted human unpredictability. Bioships that tried to adapt to one type of attack found themselves vulnerable to completely different approaches. Coordination protocols that accounted for thousands of variables couldn't process tactics that involved interpretive dance, weaponized customer service, and what Chief Engineer Nakamura called aggressive improvisation. Status report, Admiral Morrison called through the network. The responses came in a stream of consciousness from across the fleet.
Victories measured not just in destroyed bioships, but in converted ones, confused ones, and ones that had simply given up trying to understand what they were fighting. Sarah looked at her tactical display and felt something she hadn't expected: hope. The swarm was retreating. Not the tactical withdrawal they'd seen before, but genuine retreat. Bioships were abandoning the solar system en masse, their formations breaking up as individual vessels chose flight over incomprehension. All ships, Kara's voice came through the network, warm with pride and exhaustion. The solar system is secure. But our work isn't finished. Sarah understood. The swarm hadn't just been defeated, they'd been changed. Bioships that had tried to absorb human tactics had instead been infected with human creativity. They would carry that infection back to the greater swarm, spreading chaos and innovation throughout their collective consciousness. The galaxy thought we were too primitive to matter, Morrison announced to the fleet. They were wrong. We weren't too primitive, we were too complex. Too chaotic. Too human. As Sarah watched the last swarm bioships disappear into hyperspace, she felt the shared consciousness of the human fleet settle into something like satisfaction. They'd done more than survive the greatest threat in galactic history. They'd introduced that threat to the concept of possibility. What happens now? Captain Shaw asked from the Star Princess. Kara's response carried the weight of someone who had seen beyond the edge of known space. Now we go visit our neighbors. The galaxy is about to learn that humanity doesn't just make friends, we make family. And we're about to expand the family considerably. Sarah smiled as she felt the network of human consciousness reach out beyond the solar system, touching the hidden communities of survivors, exiles, and rebels that humanity had been quietly supporting for decades. The Kethmori swarm had been just the beginning. The real revolution was about to start. All ships, Morrison's final order came through the network: prepare for extended operations. We have a galaxy to transform. Through the viewport of the persistent dream, Sarah watched as human vessels began forming up for the journey beyond Earth's borders. Ships that had once carried cargo, passengers, and dreams now carried something far more precious: proof that the universe was vast enough for every kind of life, every type of consciousness, every possible way of being. The galaxy had spent millennia organizing itself into hierarchies of advancement and sophistication. Humanity was about to teach it the revolutionary concept that there were no primitive species, only species that hadn't been given the chance to surprise everyone. And humans, Sarah reflected as she felt the quantum consciousness of her species reaching out to touch minds across the galaxy, were very, very good at surprising people. The war was over. The real work was just beginning.